I'm Luke, the Hard Times guy. And not too long ago, probably within the last 4 or 5 weeks, there was a series of posts on Facebook among some members of my family, and the subject was a silly little floppy-headed doll that looked like a clown that were in possession of my oldest daughter Shannon, and then the discussion was about other people in the family who have one of these dolls, and they call this doll Tom Dooley. And so that discussion went on for a while, different ones talking about the doll, and it caused me to start thinking about some things. And I'm not going to talk about the doll. They talked about the doll enough. I'm just going to tell you that my Aunt Colleen made those dolls, or the original ones. Maybe other people have made some similar ones since then off the pattern, because I think she provided the pattern to some people in the family. But she made a doll. She called the doll Tom Dooley. And they were talking about the dolls and who had them, and why they were called Tom Dooley. And they were called Tom Dooley after a song that was popular at one time, I'm going to say early 1950s. And it was about a man, and his name was Tom Dooley. They spelled it D-U-L-A and pronounced it Dooley, but these dolls are D-O-O-L-E-Y, and the song was D-O-O-L-E-Y. But that's what caused me to start thinking, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, about my mom, about my Aunt Colleen, and I think at the end I'll even throw Aunt Dot into the mix, because she fits into this same line of thought towards the end of this video. We have a perspective about age. I'm 77 years old, and 77 from anybody's perspective is old. I'm sure that my great-grandkids look at me and they don't think about, in relation to age, anything but that he's an old man. Papa Luke is old. But through my lifetime, that perspective has changed. And when I started thinking about Tom Dooley and my mom and Aunt Colleen, and when these dolls were made, and the song Tom Dooley, and when that song was made, I came to realize that my mom and my Aunt Colleen were young girls. And during that time, when Tom Dooley, I can remember when that song was popular and received play on the radio, and some of us may have even had the record by the Kingston Trio, Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley. I can remember that song from my youth, and when I was that age, I never thought of my mom as being a young girl. I thought her as an old woman. My mom was I didn't really think about her age, but she was my mom. She wasn't a young girl. She was my mom. And nowadays I have grandchildren, several of them, that are older than my mom was then, and I think of them as kids, really, still. People their age, they're just kids. I can remember when... So it's a perspective thing about age. And so as I began to think about this, and as I began to think about Mom and Colleen, I thought, you know what? I can remember them and things that they did around this thought of the hang down your head Tom Dooley thing. This doll was made, and it had, the way it's made, they just sewed its head onto the body with some cross stitching there, and it wasn't any support, and that doll's head flopped. And because they couldn't keep the head upright, Aunt Colleen, with her sense of humor, and she had one, named the doll Tom Dooley because of that song where it said, "Hang down your head, Tom Dooley." This doll's head hung down all the time. That's where that came from. And I started thinking about it, and I could recall my mom and Aunt Colleen singing that song, "Hang down your head, Tom Dooley," and acting the fool while they did it. And when I started doing the math and doing the thinking about it, that my mom and her sister acting like teenage girls, they weren't much more than teenage girls. They were some more than teenage girls, but you know, Aunt Colleen was probably in her 20s, and Mom may even been 29, 28, somewhere in there. During part of this that I'm remembering, for sure. Because not just Tom Dooley, there were other songs that when I hear those songs, I think of instances of Mom and Aunt Colleen singing those songs. In the last video I talked about that I made, I talked about my grandmother and her 55 Chevrolet, and I talked about, I think maybe that was her first car. Well, women didn't used to get their driver's license like they did later. Some women never got a driver's license, but a lot of them didn't get a driver's license until they were older. And I'm not sure that my mom and my Aunt Colleen didn't get their driver's license maybe later in life than you would think. In fact, I think maybe Aunt Colleen had hers before Mom did, her driver's license. But I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking about how old they were, and I'm thinking, you know what? Why were these things going on like they were? And a lot of times this was happening at our house, and Aunt Colleen was there. And I'm starting to think that maybe Aunt Colleen was there because Aunt Colleen had a driver's license and a car and could be there, come visit her sister. Mom didn't have a driver's license and a car yet and couldn't go across town to see Aunt Colleen without walking. So a lot of this happened in our house on East 15th Street that I'm going to share with you. I'm going to jump from Tom Dooley now to a song called 16 Tons. And that song was recorded by more than one person, but the recording of it that I remember and the recording of it that they sang, the two of them, all the time, a sing-along with it on the radio when it came on the radio, or sometimes without the radio accompaniment, they just burst into 16 Tons of Number 9 Coal by Tennessee Ernie Ford. And they sang that song. And one of the lines of that song had to do with being trapped in a job with working in the coal mines and having to work every day and not being able to even have real money. They had script to spend in the company store. And one of the lines has to do with him saying, "I sold my soul to the company store." And I remember my mom and her sister, Aunt Colleen, singing that song. They liked Tennessee Ernie Ford. They liked that song, and I can remember them singing it together. And then along with that, the next one that I remember, and I remember one day they moved. They hurriedly shoved. We had a yellow Formica table with chrome legs in the kitchen, and they hurriedly shoved that over towards the kitchen sink. And between that stove then and the mom's Maytag washing machine that sat on the other wall, they had room to dance. They grabbed each other by their hands like this, and they began dancing around like fools, singing this song that was on the radio. And until that song was over, they danced and sang. And me for sure, and maybe my brothers and sisters, I don't remember them in this being involved in the issue, but I remember this distinctly. They sang Kaliga. And that was, at that time, nowadays when I hear the song Kaliga, it's usually a version done by Charlie Pride. And most of you, if you know the song at all, that's probably the version you've heard and you relate to. But an earlier version of it, and I think he made a hit maybe on this song. In fact, I think this is one of those songs that Hank Williams recorded, but it wasn't released yet when he died. And this song, I think, was released, might be wrong about this, but I think this song was released after Hank Williams died. He'd already recorded the song, but it was released on an album after he died, Kaliga. And it's about a wooden Indian that was carved and sitting in front of an antique store. And about he had fallen in love with the Indian maid across the street, or I think maybe the Indian was I think Kaliga was maybe at the cigar store, and the Indian maid was over at the antique store. I can't remember how the lyrics go, but Mom and Aunt Colleen liked that song, and they were doing a raucous rendition of it while they danced around on the linoleum in our kitchen on East 15th Street. And that song frequently makes me think of that scene, that time, when my mom was acting like a teenage girl. And of course I didn't think of her as a teenage girl then, but she wasn't too far removed from being a teenage girl when Kaliga came out in the early 50s. The Hank Williams version of Kaliga came out and had been on the radio. And one of the lines in that song was, "Poor old Kaliga, he never got a kiss," referring to his longing and love for this Indian-made wooden Indian statue over in the antique store who somebody bought and took away, and Kaliga never got to tell her about it, how his love for her. Poor old Kaliga never got a kiss. And that my mom and Aunt Colleen both made an emphatic effort to tell you how pitiful that was, that this poor old Indian never got his kiss. And there were other songs, and I can't go into all of them, but I know that they must have been Hank Williams fans, because another one of the songs that they used to sing is "Your Cheatin Heart." I can remember them singing that. I can remember them singing "I Saw the Light," which was kind of a gospel song that Hank Williams did. And I can remember that those two young women, my mom, my aunt, singing those songs. I think even like, I may have this confused with a different situation, but I think they like to sing Peggy Sue, which was a Buddy Holly song. I think I can remember them singing that, but I may have that confused with something else, because that was later on. I don't know whether I had that as a Buddy Holly song, that record, or I had a record with that on. It was called Bobby V Meets the Crickets, and it was, I think, Bobby V doing a bunch of old Buddy Holly songs. But nevertheless, I'm about to wrap up here. One other one that I'm going to mention, because Aunt Dot enters into this. I haven't mentioned Aunt Dot. She was the older of the three sisters, but I can remember her being involved with one of these songs too. And I don't remember the occasion, but it was, I'm not sure whether Aunt Colleen was involved, but it was Aunt Dot and Mom, and it might have been Aunt Colleen as well. They were singing a song, and the name of that song, it was a Ray Stevens song. And when I got to thinking about it, I thought, you know what? I didn't even remember that Ray Stevens was, he was already a star making recordings like this back when my mom was that young, but I guess he was, because I remember her and Aunt Dot singing this song, "Please, Mr. Custer, I Don't Want to Go." It was a song about some soldier, and it was prior to General Custer's last stand at the Battle of the Little Bighorn, and this was going to happen the next day, and this soldier was trying to figure a way of getting out of going, fighting these Indians, and so that's what he's doing in this song. I don't want to go, and I can remember, I don't remember who had which parts. I think Aunt Dot had the alto part, and the other two were singing the main part of the lyrics, I don't want to go, and they were singing along, and then you'd hear them singing the soldier's part, and then you'd hear background, what I'm going to call background sounds. They were singing I don't want to go, and then someone was saying forward, ho, in the background, like it was happening whether they wanted it to or not. And those girls, they were singing the two different parts. Two of them singing the main lyrics and someone else making the background songs like forward, ho, and the things that you were hearing happening in spite of what this soldier wanted. I don't know what any of that means, but I got to thinking about it the other day, and I couldn't get it out of my mind. When Shannon and those girls were talking about Tom Dooley, I got to thinking about Tom Dooley and and that period of time when Mom and her sisters were young women, and how young they really were. I never thought of them as being that young, I don't think. And I just couldn't get that out of my mind, so the dad decided to make a video about it, and so now you have it. In the last video, I introduced a thought to you at the end of the video. I said, God is big. I mentioned that I might follow up on that today, and I've already went longer with this video, so I'm not going to follow up to the extent that I once intended to. But over the past weekend, by the way, it was my sister's birthday was Amy. She's, rest in peace, Amy. Died last year. Her birthday was the 9th. And then the 11th was Mom's birthday. Amy was born 2 days before Mom. Mom's birthday is December the 11th. And I got a friend who I always remember his birthday because his birthday is December the 11th. And so I can't help but remember his birthday because it's the same as my mom's birthday. And what's that got to do with God is big? Well, he has said, and I've heard him say this many times, he in reference to God is big, he believes, as I do, that there is a God. So he's got that part right, but here's what he's got wrong about it. It's not going to do him any good for there to be a God because he has done so many things in his mind, so many sinful things in his life, that he's going the wrong way when it's all over anyway. So good luck with that. That's kind of his attitude about it, and he's so wrong about that. He doesn't understand. He's got the I'm a sinner part right, but he's got the there's no hope for me. That's all wrong. And so that's where I want to share with that with you today. The first realization that we got to come to is I'm a sinner. I need something. And then we can realize that what we do need is redemption. And we can realize that God is big and all things are possible with God. And this God that I believe in doesn't leave us with no hope. We all have hope. There is always hope right up till we take our last breath. So I want to leave you with that. I'm a hard times guy. I'll try to continue on with that subject the next time. Until then, you have a good day.